You are now listening to the Hold Your Point podcast, a platform dedicated to discussing millennial culture and experience through a Christian lens, redefining who we are with cultural excellence and as children of the Most High, cultivating thought-provoking discussion and spreading the word of God with love. Hold your point.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Peace to the planet. This is the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. My name is Cesar Fortunato. I got Lee Strauss to my right, DJ and DTH in the room. What's happening, fellas?
Hey,
Yep.
we here. We here.
What's going on, everybody? Good to see y'all again,
Mm-hmm.
as always.
Good to see you. Good to see y'all boys. Y'all looking healthy.
Got some jerk wings in today.
Trying, man.
Jerk wings.
Yeah, health is so important. Health is wealth, man.
Health is definitely well.
Hey, I got a question, man, and it kind of hit me. All right. So Levi, let's say you got your food, right? And what's something that you normally do right before you eat?
Sometimes I pray.
Okay. So what's a prayer one would normally say?
Bless his food.
Okay. So is it lawful? Okay. Bless this food. And sometimes someone might say, okay, bless this food that, be nourishing to the body, free for, whatever else. Mm-hmm. But if you got some Chick-fil-A or something, is that prayer is that sincere?
Listen.
Is that going to be nourishing to the body?
I pray same way.
Hey, for
Bless
real.
it anyhow. If it can be done, God can do
Look,
it.
I'm not gonna
I
limit.
definitely have done this.
I'm not gonna limit my God. My God, who's to say my God can't put some nutrients and stuff inside
In
of
the
the
Big
thing
Bag.
and make it happen? My God can do it. He fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He could definitely turn my Chick-fil-A into a health meal.
Hey, you know what's funny too? Like, I
You know
heard-
Chick-fil-A has like 400 different ingredients or something like. Oh, not 400.
400.
Like 40 different ingredients.
Yeah,
It's
something like
crazy.
Really? In the
Yeah.
chicken?
Yeah, in the chicken sandwich.
bro, as Lee said, like with the 2 loaves and the 5 fishes, I seen something the other day. It was like, what kind of fish you think Jesus made up for them people?
Escofish.
Was it fried fish?
Was it fried or raw?
Sushi? What y'all think?
I think he cooked it.
I think it was cooked somehow. Oh,
I never thought about that.
I guess if you're hungry, you'll eat it.
Yeah, right.
Sushi.
Well, we got a good episode, man. We want to jump into today, and we're going to talk about the art of communication. The art of communication, how to effectively communicate in this time, 2023. And, just right off the bat, man, one of the first questions I guess I want to ask y'all is, like, how important do y'all think it is to be relatable when you're trying to talk to someone about God?
I think that you should try to be relatable as much as possible, because for people to want to hear what you're saying, they want to know that there's something of you that is like them. I think people generally will understand and interact better with folks of who they have something similar with. So to come at somebody in a way that is not conducive to them receiving what you have to tell them, it's essentially just making noise, right? Not even it's not even communication that's occurring. It's more like you're just making noise because it's falling on deaf ears. And that may not be the intent, but along with communicating or ingrained in communication is knowing your audience. That's something that a lot of famous orators and speakers will talk about to young budding speakers and trying to help them captivate their audience. Like, I've even learned that kind of stuff in business school, to be honest. With presentations you have to make, you have to understand who it is you're presenting to, because not everyone's going to receive it the same way.
Right.
And so I think that's the same thing with the gospel.
Yeah, I kind of look at it because, I have a sales background. I always look at it in terms of the other person, like what's in it for them. Like when you're trying to communicate something to them, like why should I listen to you? What value what value would I get for me to listen to you speak to me for however much time we're speaking? So having value for that person and just something in common, like DTH was saying, something in common with that person is volumes.
Yeah, no, all y'all speaking facts right now. I mean, and it's actually biblical too. There's scripture in 1 Corinthians 9 where it says, even though I am free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was a Jew, I lived like Jew to bring Jews to Christ. When I was a Gentile, it goes on to say forth, and so on and so forth. And to that point, you have to be relatable to people to get people to listen to the words you're saying. If you're going to be someone who's going to have no type of relatability when you're relaying the words of Christ, relaying your experiences, relaying your life, then it's going to be much more difficult for people to hear what you have to say. And that's just a fact. So I'm not saying conform to what they're doing, do what they do, you know what I'm saying, indulge in what they indulge in, but you definitely have to show a level of understanding, show a level of respect for sure. And that way you can definitely reach people by being that, relatable Christian person that you're called to be.
Do y'all think like you have to also like experience what others have experienced in order to relate? Like, do y'all think that's important?
I mean, experience is the best teacher. If you're relating to someone, I feel like, okay, if someone's trying to tell me about growing up without a father, I would relate more to that person that actually went through what I went through, like that person not having a father and telling me how it was to overcome that obstacle on the other side. How can I get through this? So it's helpful when that person that's communicating with you has been through it. But, sometimes that, you can get advice from someone that perhaps hasn't gone through your specific path in life. That person is just a wise person, where they are just able to give you game on certain things of life. They're able to just kind of coach you through. So I think it's good if you can find somebody that's been through what you've been through, but if not, someone that you can vet that actually has the experience and the know-how to kind of teach you.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people can have parallels of things that they've gone through. So it's not necessarily the exact same circumstance, but there are parallels where, someone grew up without a father. Maybe somebody, didn't have certain opportunities in their life to achieve things. So in a way, without having a father, you didn't have somebody there that could allow you to grow in a certain way. And by not having certain opportunities, then you also couldn't develop in a certain way. So it may not be the exact same thing, but maybe the result is quite similar. So, but I definitely do think that going through the same thing definitely allows for greater communication, greater delivery of a message. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, for Christians and for non-Christians to see, is that we have a high priest, as the word says, who is not that he can't be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but he's been in all points tested as we are, yet without sin. And so, Christ himself has been in positions where he's been tempted with sin. He's been tempted with death, or not tempted, but, pursued to be killed multiple times and stoned, different things like that, being hated. He understands and everything that we go through. So I think he's the ultimate, person we look to say, Christ understands what I'm feeling. And so that's why we can look to him for that comfort. So in the same way, here on earth, amongst ourselves, when we see that somebody has gone through stuff we've gone through, it's a much better way for us to receive the message from them.
Yeah, and I think because I had kind of talked to Bishop Syria a little bit about this, and he had said something to me that kind of was a little profound, and he was like, it doesn't matter how well you can preach or how well you can teach. It's all about how you have a heart for God's people. And the thing that I was thinking about in that thought is you have some people who can preach or teach really well because they know how to prepare, right? But there's a difference when someone is talking about their personal testimony and how they gotten over something. Like in that, a lot of times, like you may not have gone through what they went through, but you feel it so much more deeply than versus someone who can just articulate the scripture in a good way.
Yeah,
So
that's true. And DJ brought up something earlier about being able to be of service to people, which is, I think, a very helpful way to get across to them when you're trying to deliver a message. And he mentioned, what's in it for me? I've heard it in business school, the WIFM, they'll call it as an abbreviation, what's in it for me? And that's what people want to know. People are on that kind of time. People don't have the time for you to waste their time because they're busy trying to pursue their goals and things. So they need to know that it's something of value to them. And I think, there's biblical precedent for that as well. James 2:15-17, if a brother or sister be naked and in lack of daily food, and one of you say unto them, go in peace, be ye warmed and filled, and yet you give them not the things that they need for the body, what does it profit?
Exactly.
Even so, faith, if it have not works, itself is dead. And so I think of that as an example of somebody, even as Fortunato just said, someone who can articulate very well the scriptures and give you the prophecy and what everything means, and yet when you really need something, they're not able to deliver that. And so you have to go beyond just saying what you want to say when you communicate with people. You got to give them something that they need so that they can receive what it is you have for them.
Absolutely. Just to get in here on that real quick, the value part of what you talk about is incredibly important. It's incredibly important in what you do. Like there's scriptural evidence that says, let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how to answer everybody. If you look at the attributes of salt, like salt is super valuable, or was super valuable, still is back in those days. Like God is saying he wants our conversation to have weight. He wants our conversation to be, we're saying actually meaningful things. You see nowadays you have many people who are just talking, I know we have mics, but you have many hot mics nowadays that are just, hey, talking. They're just talking and they're not really giving any value. They're not giving anybody talking heads. They're just giving people just what they want to hear. Hot air, not any real purpose, not any real value behind it. And that's what I think, that's why, first of all, I love doing this with you brothers, because, hey, I feel like we offer some value. We offer value to people in terms of in terms of Christian life, the conversations that we have, hopefully it helps people. Hopefully people are able to have these conversations with their own friends and they're able to, keep that going, because that's really where it's at, is the conversation with value.
Yeah, for sure. And so, like, I want to ask y'all too, like, what do y'all think Paul meant when he said that he became all things to all people? So, he might be able to win some. I think we might have been talking about this a little bit off camera, but like, what do y'all think that like means for real?
I think it's Paul understood the importance of opening up yourself to different ways of communicating, different ways of behaving. Overall, as a child of God, you're still going to obviously abide by the path that Christ has laid before us. But in living in a world with disparate people and different backgrounds, cultures, upbringings, you're going to have people that communicate differently. And so I think Paul is expressing the importance for himself, but also for us in following his lead and also Christ's lead, that you reach people where they are. And that's something DJ has said in other pods before, how Christ will meet us where we are, but then he won't let us stay there. And I think that's the same thing with us, is to be careful as we do augment ourselves in a way so that we can touch folks in a way that matters. We also don't want to lose footing of what is important. Because something I think I've seen as I continue here is just, there are, again, I think there are Christians with really good intentions who seek to connect with other folks, other non-Christians, and bring them to Christ, but may sacrifice certain principles along the way in order to attract a crowd. And so while the intention is good, and I definitely keep that fervency, but there has to be a certain line in the sand that you don't cross in terms of standing up for what's true. But certainly reaching out and making yourself pliable so that you can reach others is super important.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, that's a good point. But I just wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit because as you brought up, Paul, if you are reaching out to someone, let's say, you're trying to tell them about God and, the different things associated with that, and they aren't receiving it. They know the word, but I guess the word that I can use here is that they're just ignorant, right? They decide to just, I hear what you're saying, but I'm still going to do my own thing. Do we still try to reach those people? How do we work with that? How do we work around that? Do we even spend the time to continue to try to reach them? People that quote unquote ignorant.
Yeah, I think it's important because the word says to preach the word in season and out of season. And all we do, as David says often, one plants, the other sows, and God does the harvesting. So all we can do is drop seed, leave seed, and just pray that, God will to allow it to grow. But a lot of times, that's why it's even for me, I remember a few years ago, actually, I had a good friend in Orlando that I was trying to, tell about the Sabbath and church and stuff. And man, we would go hours just going back and forth on why he thought it was, not the absolute truth or whatever. And then why I was trying to show him different things in the Bible. And then the piece that kind of broke it mostly was just personal experience, because a lot of times it's okay, you can tell me what the Bible says and you can articulate it good, but if you can't tell me what God has done for you personally, so I can know it's real, that it's an opportunity for me, then I don't believe it. And it's almost like how where it's you have a hot idea for a business or something, right? But people aren't sold on that idea until you see the fruits of your labor, until they see the cars and the houses, and oh, great, now I know I can do it. And so I think it's almost it's almost the same thing in the spiritual. It's allowing personal experiences to kind of show that, so people can kind of be drawn.
I think the question DJ asked is really good, because I think that's something a lot of Christians might struggle with initially. As you even said, Fortunato, you had a conversation with a friend of yours. I've had a similar conversation a couple times with a friend of mine from school, just on, God and his existence, right? Not even Sabbath stuff, right? So, and it would carry on for a while. And then at the end of it, you still didn't convince him, or I didn't convince him, right? And so the question of whether we continue with these people, something that I've heard recently from who I've mentioned before, Frank Turek, a Christian apologist, something when you're speaking about the gospel to people who are not saved, he said one of the questions you should ask when you're first talking to them is, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And the reason why you ask that is because the way they respond will tell you how you need to proceed. If they say yes, then you're speaking to someone who is reasonable, who's willing to agree with truth. If something were true, so if they were to say no, if Christianity were true, I'm still not going to believe it. Well, then that this person is not on a quest for truth. They're on a quest for happiness.
That's a great way to put it.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to read that because you actually kind of touched on this verse, Proverbs 9:6. Anything you say to wise will make them wiser. Whatever you tell the righteous will add to their knowledge. So I think basically what you're saying is a wise person may perhaps be wise, but just ignorant in one particular area of their life, right? But if you're able to tell them something, they will become wiser. Tell them something that is good for them, they will become wiser. That's kind of how I interpret this verse. A wise person would understand, digest the information that you're giving them and be like, well, the analogy you just said, if I was to tell you if Christianity was true, right, would you then? That's a wise person that somehow, maybe or another, Christianity just, for whatever reason, they just didn't grow up Christian, or whatever the case may be, which is why they need brothers like you guys to kind of tell them what the gospel is, what we're doing is a good thing, to spread the knowledge.
Yeah, but I don't think it's always just about like them like being ignorant or not wanting to accept, because there's pain behind that too. Because even in the example of my friend, like he ultimately got baptized in the Church of God, and he was the only member of his family, like no one before had came to the Sabbath, and so it was just him. Like, but it's painful because it's like they have to get past the fact that they've had family members who never came to the truth and who have gone and passed on now that they care about. And now you're telling me, you're flipping my whole world by telling me that, grandma who might have been Lutheran or Catholic didn't have the truth. And they're trying to like sit with that while also making the decision. Like, for me personally, I want to make sure that I find the truth, because I think Jose said it one time before. It's like, okay, what if we go through our whole life and then Jesus isn't real? Then at least, we would have, I forget how he puts it.
At least we lived a way that you could feel
a righteous life.
Right,
yeah, versus like going through your whole life and then thinking Jesus wasn't real, and you get to the end and he was real. So I think there's just there's layers to it too, man, because some of these, it be families, whole generations who's never came to the Sabbath, and now you putting a fork in that spoke, and you're trying to turn.
And we're
no, go ahead.
And we're not saying like, because we have no idea what God's plan, Jesus' plan is, honestly. Like, so perhaps some of those generations of his family could have been saved. We don't know what Jesus' plan is. We don't. All we know is there's a specific guideline that he laid out, that he said, follow this, right? And I don't know about them or anybody else who may be listening to this. I would prefer to follow, and what I'm saying, and let the chips fall where they may fall. After that, at least I tried to do my part.
And we're all running this race together, but at the same time, it's an individual race.
That's true.
Because you can't save somebody else. That's for your. So, well, I mean, Christ does the saving, right? But it's your own personal connection with him that is what's going to take you to the kingdom. There's a verse that says everyone has to work out their own salvation in fear and trembling. It's your own thing. Even if you're married, your spouse can't take care of you in that regard. So, it's interesting how you said, Fortunato, with folks who are grappling with the fact of coming to the truth and realizing maybe the rest of their family who don't have the truth, are lost, right? And I think it's an interesting point for sure. But something I think of is that those people, again, need to focus at some point on themselves, not in a selfish way, but to understand, if you've been given an opportunity to come to the knowledge of Christ, that's something you don't want to throw away. And you shouldn't let that deter you from pursuing Christ, because even as an example, my father, who grew up Catholic, his whole family is Catholic. But when he came to the church, he faced a lot of opposition from the family, because, this is not how we believe. We're Catholic, you know what I'm saying? And so, but he made up in his mind that this is how I'm going to go and lead my family. So he had to deal with, somewhat of a separation from the family because of the path he chose to go on from where he was. But he counted it all, I guess, to the glory of God, that's what he's going to do. And something else I wanted to mention, DJ brought up from a little earlier about how do you deal with the fact where you're communicating with people and they just don't seem to
be receptive.
Receptive to your message, is that I've kind of felt that way. Like I gave the example how I spoke with my friend about the existence of God and we weren't really getting anywhere. Something that's given me comfort is the fact that we're not called to save people. We're called to preach the gospel.
Yep.
That's it. And because you might get, at least the way I felt,
Right.
I've gotten in my head where like, man, am I really getting anybody to Christ for real? Like there's work to be done. But at the end of the day, it's not my job to do the heart change in them. My job is to tell you about Jesus and let you know that he died for you, he loves you, and he's made a way for you to live eternally with him. But it's up to the person to make that choice. I don't think converting the soul is my or anyone's job.
You
but
can't
we are
force
called
nobody
to
to
preach
do
the gospel.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
it's the same example. Real quick on that. When we go out there and you call yourself a fisher of men, you can't make the fish get into your net.
That's where I was going.
All you can do though is put your net out there, and the fish get caught. Yes, you have to take action. I do agree. There is action to do, but you can't make the other person do what you want to do, and you can't feel down. You can't feel down on yourself. And I get what DCH is saying. Like sometimes you might feel like, oh, I'm doing work, and people aren't coming, or people aren't doing the things. Am I doing the right will of God? You just got to keep pushing. In my head, you got to keep pushing. Keep casting out your net. Keep casting out your net. Keep casting out your net. I know it might seem hard. It might seem difficult.
Keep casting out your net.
Keep casting out your net. Yeah, that might be a term. It might be like that. But if you
preach up.
If you go your whole life and you save one soul, the heavens will rejoice.
Man, okay. So this is my thing, and I hear you. I agree with y'all, but I don't think that's enough. And I think that's minimum requirements, because remember, there's a passage in the Bible when the disciples went to sit down and eat, and they asked Jesus if he was going to eat, and he said he wasn't hungry because he's hungry for a different type of meat. And then he started telling them, like, why y'all, and I'm paraphrasing, but why y'all sitting here worrying about what you're going to eat? There's other people out there putting in work, and you're going to come in their footsteps of the work that they're doing. And so I think, like, even when in that example, when he said to come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men, like, that's the goal. And when we go out, like on Saturday afternoons, we go to the homeless parks and we talk, like, every time my goal is to catch fish, because that's what, like, I want to do. And I get, like you said, like, I get frustrated because it's like, man, it's so hard, especially like with the homeless community, because they see like their immediate circumstances and they not trying to hear like everything else you're trying to do. They trying to like get this sorted out now, maybe somewhere to sleep tonight, and start working on getting their ID so they can get a job. Like, they're not trying to. So it's like, I get what y'all saying, but it's like in the Bible, there's context too, that our focus should be trying to win souls for the kingdom, because the commission was to go out and preach the gospel, but it's not just to preach the gospel and then shake off your boots from the town and just keep on going. It's to try and convert people and increase the family of God. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I want to express is not to get too down on yourself to the point where you would give up, because then now you're not following the Great Commission anymore, because it doesn't say to preach and then stop at the first no, because you're going to get a lot of no's, but not to get weary in your well-doing, because I think that's in the Bible for that purpose, is that this road that we're on, filled with rejection and bad things happening to us, it can be wearisome, and especially when you're trying to get the word out, it can be hard, but it's not to get weary in your well-doing, but to continue. So something I wanted to ask though, in the process of communicating to others, how much should tolerance play a factor in when you're communicating with them? What do you think about? Because I think today there's a from my perspective, there's a wave of how you must be tolerant in the world in order to be a good human being. And if you're not tolerating other people and their ways of life, then you're a bigot, or you are, you don't accept other people's ways of life. So tolerance is the wave now. Yeah. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think about that whole thing?
So I would say, in terms of tolerance, Christianity is probably the most tolerant, because when you look at Muslim religion and Buddhism, like there's no tolerance. This is exactly what you see is written. This is how we follow things. So it's a slippery slope, because you want to be a fisher of men. You want to be able to help save lives, but then you also, I think we actually alluded to it earlier, you also don't want to step away from what God has ordained for us to follow. So in terms of tolerance, I think that there should be a level that we should respect and not surpass that.
So I think it's a fine line because you can't clean fish before you catch it. So like, and then even with Jesus, like he ate with people he wasn't supposed to quote unquote be eating with. That doesn't mean that he was condoning their lifestyles or anything, but he was again meeting them where they were so he can be the affect change. You know what I'm saying? Instead of sometimes people go into those circumstances or environment and they allow the environment to change them. But if we're strong enough, like Paul or like Jesus, we can go into those environments and affect change without necessarily tolerating the sin per se, but understanding that you don't clean fish before you catch it.
Yeah,
period. And then
my bad.
you good. And then that's pretty much it. You kind of cut.
My bad. Sorry, I mean to stop your train of thought real quick. But what I was just going to say was that, I think a couple of us has kind of hit it already or alluded to it. I was just saying what we're talking about is I'm gonna get back in my bag here. Is balance. We're talking about. Hey, I already know what I'm on. It's balance. We're talking about a way to communicate to people to where you can get your message across, but where you're also not compromising your faith. DJ brought up a good point where he talked about how Christianity is probably the most tolerant, and I was actually talking to someone who's not a believer, and that was actually their reason for not being a Christian, because they look at other religions, they study other religions, they say these other religions are very strict, they're very strict, they don't veer off. So in his mind, these were religions that were more true in his head. If Christianity is going to be so wishy-washy sometimes with what they say and what they do, then hey, that can't be true in his mind. I had to, it was conversations that we had obviously with that, with the good and the bad, and I was obviously showing him like, hey, some inconsistencies with the other religions as well. Not to say that should be your standard, but you should have a level of balance where you can display your message, but also you're true to your message.
I think I don't want to say where the wishy-washy kind of took place, but obviously we know the Old Testament was about that life. Tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye. And then New Testament is kind of more so being a savior of all people and being accepted of all. So I guess I can kind of see where your friend was talking about. But like I said, again, it's a slippery slope as to what you should allow and not allow.
So I got a question for y'all too. So now, like in regards to communication, I think it's 70%, but if 70% of communication is nonverbal, do y'all think it's important also like how we carry ourselves when we're trying to deliver messages of love of God to people?
Absolutely. And there's a phrase you guys have probably heard before. It says, preach the gospel always, and if possible, or if necessary, use words. And so that's saying your lifestyle should be something that they can see, to where you're exhibiting the lifestyle of Christ that he has instructed us to live, that he showed us. So if you are someone who's trying to communicate the gospel, and again, we mentioned this on another episode, where there will be people in the end time saying, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy? Didn't I do all these things? And yet I never knew you. It's possible that there are people out there, not just possible, it unfortunately is happening, where they're preaching the message, they're saying certain things, but behind closed doors, living a different life. And a lot of times what's done in the dark will come to the light. And so when people find that out, they're even less likely to listen to you, because it's even though you'll hear that said to children sometimes is do as I say, not as I do. And the reason that's a thing is because parents mess up too. Parents are going to do the wrong thing sometimes, but the parents still know what is right, so they're going to tell the kid. But no matter how you speak to the kid, they're still going to do as they see rather than what you say. Yep. The only time they'll do what they say is when it matches what you do. And so same thing for us as Christians. If we're going to live our lives in a certain way that's contrary to what we know to be right, and at the same time try to reach people, I think it's probably going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's not even just kids that do like what you they'll follow what you do. It's people in general. When you're in like a capacity of leadership, like you can talk to people till you blue in the face, but like a lot of times they're gonna do what you do. So like for instance, you know, like our church, we had an issue with just like starting on time, and so like a few of us brothers were like, all right, we're gonna be here 15 minutes early every week, and as long as the musician, the moderator, whoever is needed to be here is here, we're gonna start. Period. And it's like, you know, it took a couple weeks, but then it's like you don't even have to talk about it because everybody kind of sees now, okay, they serious. They're here every week, 15 minutes early. Now we know we need to be in the place on time.
Man,
so
you know who been on that for the longest?
Nat,
Boy. Nat's been on that. He's been blowing that
That's
horn.
his brother.
Shout out to Nat.
My brother. Shout out to Nat, man. He's been on that tip for a long time with the time thing. But I think that's great, like you said, because if that's been a thing for us, although we've gotten a lot better with starting on time. That's just the Caribbean way, it seems. But rather than just continually beating people over the head, brother, we need to start on time. We need to start on time. You just got to do it. You know what I'm saying? You got to get to the point where you just do it, and people will learn. People will follow. Oh, I'm missing praise and worship every time I come at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, whatever it is. You know, like I got to start coming earlier.
Yep. Now, I mean, last thing I guess real quick is just in regards to the communication. Like, how really do y'all talk to different people, right? Because yesterday, like I found myself where, you know, doing like a study on the importance of fasting. But then like I also had like a conversation with a 7-year-old and trying to explain to her how Jesus loves her and we're family and family takes care of each other. So it's like, you know, how do y'all deduce it or whittle it down for your audience depending on who it is that you're talking to?
Well, I guess I'm gonna kind of remix your question a little bit, but I think as we talking about communication, a lot of people sometimes don't look at the 7-year-old that's coming up, right? They will kind of just look past them or just like overlook them, and we got to realize like you shouldn't look down on anybody, regardless what their age or status or whatever it is, because you never know what their future may bring, right? A story that kind of comes to mind is Joseph, as we know his story. He had issues with his brothers, and then they eventually sold him into slavery, right? But not knowing the very brother that they sold into slavery was going to be the one to save him from 7 years of famine. So, like, we got to be careful. How do we treat people, right? We should always be treating people correctly, because we just never know, you know, who they're going to turn out to be or what God is going to use them to be.
Yeah, no, facts. There's definitely to the question's point. There's some people that you may have to talk to them if you're in a leadership capacity. You may have to, if you know you have to feed them milk as they're a babe, then you know you have to talk to them in a certain way. You have to talk to them about, there's certain things that they might not be ready for. There's certain things you might have to phrase a certain way because they're a babe in Christ. Now, if you have someone who's maybe a little more mature in Christ, you may be able to talk to them differently. You're able to give them the steak, because there might be bones in that steak, but you know that they're able enough and they're old enough to spit out the bones. And so, you know, you have to be aware of your audience. I think DTH mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's just necessary to, as Paul said, become all things to all men. You know, and I think another aspect with the whole communication and trying to tailor it to the right audience is realizing that it may take multiple times. You know, it's not just necessarily going to happen in one shot. You understand what I said fully right away and I'm done with you. You know, it might take more time. So when you are dealing with maybe a child, of course, the message will come across a little differently, and also it might take a few more times, and that could happen with an adult as well.
Yeah, I'll say this. I kind of want to touch on it, but we kind of deviated in terms of silent communication. I believe a good reference point is when Jesus was being persecuted, right? I believe the religious men had him in trial, and they was telling them all the different counts of what they claimed that he was guilty of, and he said nothing.
Right. Did not say a word.
He didn't say a single word. Why? It's because sometimes not saying anything is more powerful. Because to be honest, they had their minds made up already. Like a wise man, why would a wise man argue with fools?
True.
So
That's good.
by him wasting his energy and going back and forth for what what they were going to do was going to be done.
They made up their mind. That's a really good point. My wife actually brings up that scripture a lot of times, more in a cheekish way, but like, don't argue with fools. When we get into it, she's like, I'm not gonna argue with you. You know what I'm saying? But it is really true. It is really true that silence is incredibly powerful. And I've even, we're talking in the spiritual realm, but even with just the natural, I've heard of orators again use silence as a mechanism to get at the attention of their listeners. And sometimes people might think, what's wrong? Does he forget what he needed to say? But really, silence can focus the people and really have them listen in.
Facts.
And even as I work on myself, like how I'm trying to be better with even speaking and talking and try to eliminate my ums and ahs, is just slow down and pause. And I've learned, I've heard people say that it's a way to bring in the attention of people. And you might think that you sound slow or you're speaking too slowly, but really people don't pick that up. They're just waiting for you to go on.
Yeah, DJ asked me something about that the other day, and I was just like, I was doing like speaking and stuff, and I was telling him like, man, I was trying to slow down and like, trying to like make sure I don't run over no points and stuff. So yeah, that's a good point, man. Just the use of silence, even when you're speaking, is powerful, because a lot of times we try to fill in the gaps with extra things and like.
Yeah,
that's dope.
Yeah. It's like we think that in our head there's not supposed to be a break as you're talking. So as I'm talking, and if I can't think of something to say, we throw a filler word in there, just to fill the gap, because it feels awkward. But really, the listeners don't see it that way. But to DJ's point, using the silence as Christ did in that instance, being brought before the Sadducees and the Romans and everything being crucified, like you said. His silence spoke more than anything he could have said at that point, because if in that particular instance their minds were already made up. But I think in another instance, silence can really show, let's say, maybe disapproval. Like if a child behaves poorly and you just stare at them without saying anything, they already understand what time it is.
They get it.
So silence is an incredible tool.
Yeah, and I seen something too, like they was like, oh, when you're speaking and it's a speech, it's like a beautiful song, and when you throw filler words, it's like you hit the wrong key. So it's like, man, like, stop hitting the wrong keys. The song sounds good. So
There you have it.
But yeah, so I mean, as we start to wrap this, I got one last question for y'all. And in regards to just communication, right? So we know professionally, like all of us has been in just different working environments, and they always teach us, we've learned that people learn in different capacities, have different learning styles. And then so a lot of times when it's like professional training, they try to appeal to different learning styles, because that is something that we're conscious of, right? Some people are auditory learners. They need to see it, do it, whatever. Do you think like our churches captivates that in that capacity, where like, or is it just one learning style period that we feed people regardless of what?
I'll start there. I definitely feel like the church can use some more diversity in terms of their teaching styles and how they try to relate to people. You definitely see kind of a cookie cutter example a lot of times of how people try to teach, on how people try to instruct, on how people try to communicate simply in Church of God nowadays. Not to say that, we should be imploring every and anything we see, mixing and matching, but there should definitely be a little more diversity when it comes to people in their learning styles. You have people who are auditory, visual, people who are more instructive to softer spoken words, people who who want the ha, rah, rah, yah preaching, you know what I'm saying? But you have to be able to know when to do these things, how to do these things, if you should do these things. There's definitely some different dynamics that should be implemented in the church, I feel like.
Yeah, quickly, I'll say I agree. I think there's more of a blanket style of teaching and instruction that doesn't serve everybody well. But I think with that, the church needs more bodies that I see.
Yeah, I was just gonna
for
say,
sure.
I think it's a
More
lack of
bodies.
resources.
Yeah.
It's a lack of resources. Of course, you probably would want to have different teaching styles, but who's going to teach him?
can
There's
you-
only
yeah,
one teacher,
what can
maybe
you
two, and he need a break. He been teaching the last 4 weeks. My man, he want to chill. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a lack of resources, unfortunately. But if there was more resources, then perhaps the church or whatever organization could do more.
That's facts. That's facts.
Well, there you have it, man. This is just a little bit about the art of communication, some of the effectiveness. I think we got some real jewels from all the fellas in different capacities. That silence piece was definitely big for me. But, you know, this has been another powerful hour with the Hold Your Point podcast. We are the Hold Your Point podcast crew. Make sure you like and subscribe, tell a friend and tell a friend. Until next time, man, we out of here.